All right, today we are diving into a really powerful and deeply personal memoir by Vivek Shraya called I'm Afraid of Men. It's a slim book, but wow, does it pack a punch. It really explores how fear, masculinity, and gender identity are things we learn and things we live with. The book kicks off with this incredibly arresting line, and honestly, it sets the stage for everything. For Shreya, this isn't some abstract idea, it's a learned response. It's an education that started way back in childhood and really continues every single day. And this fear, it shows up in the most routine, everyday moments. I mean, it starts from the very beginning of the day. A simple choice like getting dressed becomes a whole risk assessment. Is this shirt gonna highlight my femininity too much? Is it gonna draw the wrong kind of attention? And that anxiety just continues the moment she steps outside. Public space turns into a gauntlet. Shrey describes things like walking super fast to get past construction workers, or moving to the very edge of the sidewalk to let a man pass, even being terrified by the sound of footsteps behind her. And what's really fascinating is how this fear isn't just in the physical world, it seeps into the digital one too. Shreya talks about having to carefully craft emails to men, adding exclamation points to soften the tone, to sound submissive, just to avoid making someone agitated or offended. So from the closet, to the commute, to the computer, fear is basically running the show. So that brings us right into our first section, A Life Lived in Fear. The book lays out in such stark detail what it actually means to be constantly shaped by that feeling. I mean, just look at this list. These aren't one-off things. We're talking about relentless, minute-to-minute negotiations with the world. Shreya describes making herself smaller on the bus just to avoid accidentally touching a man, rushing to her apartment like she's being chased, and the sad ritual of wiping off her makeup and bindi right after a performance, before she even leaves the safety of the venue. And the toll isn't just emotional, it's physical. She develops these unexplained pains from just the constant stress of it all. And this quote just brilliantly captures the core paradox, right? Fear becomes a survival instinct. It's a shield. But having to carry that shield all the time is exhausting. It ends up eroding the very body it's trying to protect. So the big question is, where does this fear even come from? Well, our next section, The Performance of Manhood, gets right into that by looking at the really harsh lessons the author was taught about masculinity. The book lays out this series of just brutal lessons. In junior high, Shreya gets spat on for wearing her mom's jacket. Later, a straight colleague offers to help her by teaching her how to walk like a straight dude, slower, taking up more space. And then, in her 20s, she feels this pressure to become muscular, not just to be desirable in gay culture, but to be seen as safe from straight men. Each one of these moments is like a forced lesson in a very specific, very rigid version of what masculinity is supposed to be. Now, this is such a powerful statement. This was long before coming out as trans. Shreya describes this forced performance, this assimilation into a masculine role, as its own kind of transition. Just to survive, she had to become this exceptional boy, hiding her true self so completely that it felt like a total transformation. So the key takeaway here is the common thread that links all these experiences. Shreya argues it's not just homophobia or transphobia. At its root, it's a deep-seated misogyny. And not just a hatred of women, but a hatred of femininity wherever it shows up, whether it's in a boy wearing a colorful jacket, in the way someone walks, or in having a skinny body. This brings us to what I think is really the intellectual core of the book, where Shreya challenges an idea that a lot of us, I think, hold on to, the idea of the good man. And here it is, the central thesis. The book argues that holding out for a good man, this exception, this anomaly, is actually counterproductive. The concept itself is a kind of harmful fiction that distracts us from the real work that needs to be done. And this really breaks it down perfectly. On one side, you have this myth of the good man. It's this vague, unmeasurable standard, a pedestal that just sets men up for failure. But on the other side, Shreya suggests we focus on tangible actions. Does he communicate, even when it's hard? Is he dependable? Is he fallible and human? You see, the key is shifting our focus away from some fuzzy idea of goodness and toward concrete, measurable actions. Because what happens when we celebrate the good man? Shreya points out that men often get applauded for doing the absolute bare minimum, like washing the dishes. This sets the bar incredibly low.
It lets us praise the exceptions while we completely ignore the fact that harmful behavior, like intimidation, aggression, violating boundaries, is just seen as typical. And because it's typical, it becomes acceptable.
Okay, so this leads us to the final, really forward-looking part of the book's argument. If we get rid of this myth of the good man, then where do we go from there?
The ultimate call is to move beyond these rigid boxes completely. Instead of just trying to fix masculinity, Shraya asks, what would happen if we celebrated gender creativity? If we just stopped gendering behaviors and clothes and even bodies as either masculine or feminine in the first place? This is such a vulnerable and profound question. It challenges this idea that our identity has to be this one clear, straight line. It opens up the possibility that we can hold multiple truths at once, that you can embrace a past self without it invalidating your present one. It's really a call for a more complex, more forgiving, and more creative way of understanding who we are. And this is where the book leaves us. It turns the lens directly on the reader. Shreya suggests that our fear of gender nonconformity isn't just hurting people like her. It's hurting all of us. It's limiting all of us from being everything we could be. So the final challenge is a shared one, freeing ourselves from our own fears to build a different world.
This entire explainer is drawn from the pages of Vivek Shraya's unforgettable book. It's short, it's sharp, and it's an absolutely essential read that invites all of us to look at fear, gender, and ourselves in a brand new light. It's a challenge for sure, but one that's definitely worth thinking about. Thanks for joining me.